If you've got shitty knees and you don't know what to do about it, I want to show you some simple exercises to work towards cross-legged position, hip stability, and more importantly, getting a more robust knee. Let's get into it. So my advice with anything to do with the knees is let's investigate. So there's going to be different ways to approach this, and what I want you to understand is when we get the intent behind it, it's an easier way for us to decipher the movements, build strength in and around the joints, and get us moving more efficiently. Let's make sense of it. The best thing that we can do for our knee is to have stable hips, stable ankles, and really good balance. On top of that, we want to layer strength above the knee and strength below the knee. So what I'd like to go through here is some exercises and the reasons behind them to get you back on the road to recovery and stop, feeling that niggles, feeling that pain in and around the knee. Let's go. So first thing that I would like to do is we want to think of what the knee does, okay? Primarily, the apprehension comes when we're in a little bit more of an exposed position, i.e. the knees have gone over the toes. So rather than fear that movement because life's going to put us there, why don't we prepare ourselves to be able to do that? And the best way to do that is to put us in that position, but in an area where we're kind of comfortable with. We've got a little step here. I recommend anything 6 inches max, anything below, something that you're comfortable with. You could also use like a weight plate and just stand on it. I also have a broomstick. I'd also recommend being near something like a post for balance. All we're going to do is this. The reason why I like the broomstick is because it does move a little bit, so it's going to bring in a little bit more of that stability aspect into the knee. We'll start on one side, and then all I'm going to do is, if I'm starting with my right leg, I'm going to hold it with the opposite hand just to try and square me off. Initially, if we come to the edge, then we know that the distance I'm going to travel is just a little bit down and up, okay? The purpose here is we want to try to generate as much tension up through that standing leg, so we're really trying to squeeze it as best we can. We plant this out in front, okay? Then we take a nice big step up. You can even push this opposite hand out just to build tension. And then all I want you to do is take a big deep breath in, and then just start to lower down, kiss the floor, come back up. Kiss the floor, come back up. If it starts to feel relatively comfortable, we allow that heel just to travel a little bit further. So what we want to do here is, when we start to feel a little bit of comfort, can that heel go a little bit further? And what that's going to do is it's going to force this right knee just to go over the toes a little bit. We're only working in the realm that we're relatively comfortable with here. Now, as we progress with this movement, there's a few different things we could do. Number one is we could add resistance to it. So by holding onto something like a weight plate or a kettlebell or a dumbbell, this just adds more weight that's going to go down through that leg, okay? The big thing we want to watch out for is this hip kicking out. So we really want to try to keep all that tension through that standing leg, and just think of where our belly button is. We want to keep that in the same position as it goes down, so we don't want it to go left or right. Now, another variable that we could do is we could start to go a little bit higher, okay? But we want to understand the importance here. And the importance is the ability to recruit the tissue here. So when we're here, we can feel like our quad is actually engaging. If it's not, then I would spend more time having a little bit of a weight on this kind of a height, and then just working in that realm where we're really trying to generate tension. I think a good rep range for something like this is around the 15 mark. The reason being is more reps, spend more time in it, gets us more aware of that motion, okay? Where does this come in handy? Well, think about stepping down the stairs as an example. So if you're somebody who's always having to hold onto the rail, this is something that I would recommend. Also, if you're someone who struggles to get up and down off the floor, this is also going to help us to get a little bit more comfortable getting into that deep knee flexed position. Now, once we're kind of, getting comfortable with that sort of stuff, and we want to start to turn this into more like strength-based exercises as well, the way we can do this, if we use something like a TRX or any kind of resistance based training, you can use this with a suspension trainer. You can use this with a really thick band where we just loop it around something. This is just for support more than anything. What I'd also recommend is even getting a bench. Let me just grab a bench. So even by getting a bench, we give ourselves a target of where we're going to try to get to. I'm going to bring these down to halfway, just to give me a bit more space. And then all I'm going to do here, so I'm going to hold onto the handles as much as I need to. Take a big deep breath in, tense everything, so really nice and tight. And I just want you to sit back towards the bench. And then if you can, use your lower body, but use your upper body if you need to, we pull back up. So we come down, and then we pull back up. The benefit of this has two reasons. One is we know we have the support of our arms if we need it, so we're going to be less apprehensive. And then the other one is we know where the finished line is. Okay, obviously if the bench isn't there, for some of us it can be quite apprehensive trying to find what distance that we want to get to. Okay, now as we progress with this, we just use this less. So what we can do is we can come down, and then we're quite light on the straps, and we're only using it when we need to. So if we do get stuck, then we can pull to bring us up. To make this harder, we obviously remove the bench. So we take that out of the way. This time we use our arms when we need to. We just sit down. Now just aim for going a little bit past 90 degrees. That'll just help to keep tension here. For some of us, this can actually be quite a relaxed position. And if your knee's not liking it, I'd rather you keep tension through the motion as part of this. So we really want to work in that realm where we feel the tension. As we get better with this, then we can start to focus on both sides. So I'm going to plant the right leg this time. I'm going to hold on to the TRX where needed. And then I'm going to step back, plant that foot first of all, and just think of trying to get the knee to touch the floor and then coming back up. What I think about here is if there was an egg on the floor, I just want to tip it without cracking it. So just a little tip, come back up. All the tension I have is in the front leg. I'm also pulling this front leg back into my hip to keep it nice and square, generating as much tension on the front of this right hip. So come all the way down, all the way up. If that feels easy, then what we can do is obviously use the handle less. And then when we step back, we want to keep the foot off the floor, tip the knee off the floor, come back up. So feet stays off, knee heads down. So nice control through these, okay? Now, what that's going to do is going to start to build a lot of strength in and around the hips, specifically on these quads as well. But we want to think of below the knee also. So two ways I like to approach that are if we just think of what's happening on the front and we think of what's happening on the back, and we try to get relatively comfortable with activating these areas, or at least conditioning these areas. So there's two ways of doing this. One is you get yourself an apparatus that can actually allow you to build strength in this position. Obviously, if you don't have access to this, you could just do it in another variation I'll show you in a sec. What I do here is obviously I can add weight to the movement. I bring it just over the edge of the bench, and then I keep my knees a little bit unlocked. I allow the weight to pull my feet forward, so I feel a little bit of a stretch here now, specifically in that anterior tibialis, so just on the front, little muscle that runs up alongside your shin. And what I'll do here is I'll pull the toes up as high as I can, and then I slowly parachute back down. Pull the toes up, I parachute back down. If I can, then I straighten the legs to make it a little bit more specific to this area, and I really focus on right and left. To come out, I pull it back up. And if I don't have one of those, what you can do is you could set yourself up beside a wall or a post. And then what we'd look to do here is we just walk the feet out a little bit. Keep them bent if you need to, and then you want to pull the toes up, drop it back down. Pull the toes up, drop it back down. One more challenging, straighten the legs, pull toes up, drop them back down. If you're struggling to actually feel this area engage, I recommend then that you use just the single leg option. So you're really trying to pull up, come back down, and then swap over to the opposite side. Now in terms of the back of the legs, what we can do here is we just set up the step. I'm going to grab a little weight for this, but you don't necessarily have to do weight to start. Like what I said earlier, adding more resistance challenges it, recruits a little bit more tissue, allows you to grow a little bit more strength.
I'm going to just bring my heels over the edge of the step. And the purpose of that is so that I can allow my heels to fall over. I can feel more of a stretch in my calves. So only add the resistance if you feel you need it. And then from here, I'm going to hold on to this for balance. I'm going to press into the step to come all the way up and then slowly lower down. Now, if you want to recruit the tissue a lot more effectively at the back here, instead of pressing into the step, what I recommend is you think of more of pulling up, right? So from heel to the knee, I pull up rather than press on the toes. That's going to recruit all that tissue a lot more effectively. So when I'm here, heels fall over, I recruit, so I pull up from my heels, and then I parachute back down. The idea of parachuting is just slow and controlled. So I'm in control of everything that happens. Again, like what I said earlier, kind of high reps works well in this sort of stuff. So with these, I usually recommend that like 10 to 15 reps, or if you don't want to count, what's really effective is just set a clock for 45 to 60 seconds. Just go through the motion so you're really focusing on the quality of each rep. Now, the last thing I want to focus on is top of the leg, but on the back this time, even pushing up into our glutes. The benefit of this is when we build good, strong, steady glutes, that's going to help to stabilize this knee. So then, especially with balance and stuff like that, it's going to be super, super effective. So 2 exercises I want to show you here. Again, we're going to grab resistance, so grab weights. Start off fairly light in this, but what you want to do is you want to work in the realm of where you can feel tension. Okay, so if you are somebody who's naturally flexible, you might be able to hinge from the hips really, really well, but you might not be holding on to any tension. So for this one, what I recommend is either use dumbbells or a barbell. I like to tuck my butt first of all, just so that I can really try to build as much tension at the top. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock my knees a little bit, but now I'm going to keep them in that same position, so I don't bend anymore now, okay? Then from here, I'm just going to allow the dumbbells to travel down in front of my knees as I push my butt out behind me as far as I can. So when I'm actually at this bottom position, I'm really trying to keep tension down through the back of my legs. Okay, now I've really tucked my butt again. I'm going to push out behind me. You'll notice that I'm keeping my back relatively flat here. So what we don't want to see is this big arching, and what we also don't want to see is bending. So as we go down, we don't want to bend more. It takes out the effectiveness of what we're trying to achieve here, which is getting your hamstrings comfortable in a lengthened position. So all we want to do here is push out behind us, where the majority of the weight is actually on my heels here, and then the weight here, the dumbbells, are actually helping to counteract that. So I go down, and then I pull back up. Now, that's obviously using both legs. What I recommend then we move on to is holding onto a post or using a broomstick. Like what I said earlier, the broomstick just means it's going to move a little bit. And then all you're going to do is we're going to plant one foot. So let's say right foot in this instance. Same thing we just said there, we're going to unlock the knee a little bit, plant it out in front. And then all I want you to do here is you're going to hinge from your hips like what you were doing in the deadlift. So we don't want to flex our spine. We want to keep it nice and flat. And then from here, all you're going to do is you're going to push your heel out behind you as you lean forward, try and straighten that leg, and then come back up. We're going to push the heel out behind us, and then come back up. If that becomes easy, then you can do it without the broomstick, but as a starting point, use a nice solid surface, or also something that will move just a little bit. The point of this is to start to bring in a little bit more balance, but then also when we start to learn how to hinge our hip, we're also going to be recruiting that tissue at the back of the hip. Now, the benefit of all of this is that it's going to help to build a lot of stability. So even in this exercise where we're hinging, we are actually getting that ankle to fight for balance. If we do it after we've done a lot of the quad work, then we're going to recruit a lot of tissue through here to help stabilize that knee. The benefit of all this sort of stuff is then it's going to be more comfortable to get up and down off the floor. It's going to be more comfortable to get into a deep squat. I recommend that you kind of set yourself, whether it's 2 times a week, going through this sort of a sequence,
If you have any questions about this, just drop it in the comments below. And if you like what you see, please help support this channel by hitting that subscribe button. If there's anything else that you would like to see in terms of the shoulders, the hips, the spine, pop them in the comments. You're welcome.